Next item on the agenda is item 3E. This is Countywide Planning Division. This is Plan 2035 Capital Improvement Program Priority List. This is not an action item. This is a discussion. This is a new approach that we're looking to take. I've been in discussion with staff around this. We have Tina Schollers who's going to talk us through this, get any thoughts and feedback from you all. Staff's just looking for a little bit of feedback and direction. Is Katina's presenting or Ms. Rowe, you're presenting?
I'm presenting.
Okay. All right. Take it away.
All right, and I apologize a little bit. We have quite a bit of a lag, but I'm going to get going. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Scott Rowe with the Community Planning Division, here this morning at Chairman Shapiro's direction to provide an update to discuss our ongoing effort to implement Plan 2035. This morning I will provide an update on our efforts to identify the priority capital projects that we believe need to be implemented to achieve the goals, visions, and recommendations of Plan 2035. These are critical infrastructure projects that will support the recommendations for the transit-oriented, walkable, mixed-use centers that are our regional transit districts, our downtowns, our local centers in the innovation corridor, and create the environment that will hopefully lead to further private investment and the rejuvenization of our key growth areas. Next slide, please. As you're probably familiar, Plan 2035 Strategic Investment Map identifies the highest priority locations for growth and preservation in Prince George's County. Of these locations, the most important are the first round downtowns, Prince George's Plaza or Hyattsville Crossing, New Carrollton, and downtown Largo, and the innovation corridor along US 1 and Maryland 193, including BARC, the University of Maryland College Park, NASA Goddard, and places along the way. Next slide, please. Plan 2035's excuse me, Plan 2035's implementation program contains 3 critical initiatives which were to be undertaken immediately upon its approval in 2014. Step 1 was updating the zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations, which was completed between 2018 and 2022. An overarching ongoing initiative was to focus investment and attention on the downtowns and the innovation corridor. And the third one was this one, to coordinate capital improvement program review. This allows the planning department to work with partner agencies to help them identify and prioritize those projects that are going to give us the biggest bang for the buck in implementing Plan 2035's recommendations and the recommendations of those master and sector plans for those areas. Next slide, please. Plan 2035 also contains priority implementation strategies that reflect the need to direct the majority of county resources and investment to designated downtowns to ensure their success. And when we're undertaking the identification of key infrastructure projects, we're really looking at this policy and these 2 strategies. Next slide, please. Investing in infrastructure in the 3 downtowns in the innovation corridor allows Prince George's County to compete regionally and nationally with other first-tier suburbs by supporting targeted growth, making investments where we want growth to occur, placemaking, creating places where people want to be, and demonstrating public sector's commitment to investing in and building up these areas. Next slide, please. In 2015, after the approval of Plan 2035, staff prepared an initial CIP priority report and a list of priority implementation items for the 3 downtowns in the innovation corridor. Most of the projects were streetscape improvements to facilitate a safer and more attractive pedestrian and bicycle environment, and stormwater management projects to ensure that not only are new development and redevelopment is being conducted in places where there aren't stormwater management concerns, but also public stormwater management investment to alleviate costs to private developers we really want to attract to these areas. Most of the projects on the 2015 list have not been undertaken to date, although there are some notable exceptions to this, most notably the Nine Pond Stormwater Management Facility in Hyattsville, which will help with the stormwater management challenges at Hyattsville Crossing and Georges Plaza. Yes?
Scott, just go back a few sentences. You froze.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Most of the projects in the 2015 CIP priority report have not yet been done, but there are a couple of exceptions, including the Nine Pond Stormwater Management Facility in Hyattsville, which is implementing the recommendations for the first round downtown at Prince George's Plaza, and the retrofit of Ellen Road in New Carrollton associated with the Purple Line project. The report in 2015 was forwarded to the county executive and county council, but there was not a lot of follow-up on the program as a whole, just on individual projects here or there. Next slide, please. So what we're currently working on is identifying and prioritizing the key projects, and that's kind of a three-pronged approach. We're looking at our existing master plans to identify what infrastructure recommendations they prioritize to really get them, like I said, the most bang for the buck as far as county, state, and other public infrastructure, which projects have the highest impact in the near term, which projects, going out in the field and seeing what work has been done. There's a lot of paper and internet research here, but also getting out to the downtowns and seeing what work has occurred on the ground, and then coordinating with partner agencies to see what projects are in the current capital improvement program, because frankly, over the years, capital improvement programs and the state's comprehensive transportation program have moved more towards programs and not towards individual line item projects. So some of the projects that we would identify as a priority may not be specifically identified in the CIP, but may be in there. And so we're working with partner agencies to identify whether or not those projects are actually in the capital program or not. Next slide, please. So the next steps are gathering that information from the partner agencies, comparing our initial priority list with the current CIP and state CTP, and then reporting out our recommendations to the planning board, the county council, county executive, and partner agencies so we can begin to work on getting those projects prioritized and built. Next slide, please. So just to provide a reminder on how the CIP process works in any given year, in the fall, agencies are submitting their budgets to the county executive. The budget is formulated and transmitted to the council in the spring, and then the council approves it in April and May. We want to make sure that our report on this gets to those agencies and gets to the county executive in time to inform next year's county CIP. Next slide, please. Same thing with the state consolidated transportation program process. We want to make sure that we're getting recommendations to the state so that they can begin to prioritize their program for Prince George's County, and making sure that they're really focusing on those projects that are going to help us in our innovation corridor and in our first round downtowns. I will say that unfortunately, but fortunately, many of our regional transit districts are among the state's most dangerous areas for pedestrian safety and pedestrian crashes and fatalities. And that's something that the state is very aware of and wants to fix. And that will lead to more near-term investment in our regional transit districts. It's a problem we wish we didn't have, but the silver lining being that those areas are getting a lot of focus, and we will get some investment in those areas based on safety considerations that they would take a little bit more strongly than economic development considerations, which may be farther down the road. Next slide, please. I believe that concludes staff's presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
You're muted, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Ms. Burrow. That was very well done. So this is really working with staff is excited about re-engaging this process, and I think for us this is the potential to help drive development in the way that we want to drive it in the county. So I'm excited about this too. But I wanted to bring it all to you all for thoughts, questions, reactions, to help guide staff a bit too.
Yeah, well, I too think it's great, and I'm so glad to see that it's taking place. I guess the only question I have is related to the council bill, the task force. It was, I think, Councilwoman or Vice Chair Blagay establishing the task force around Plan 2030. So will this inform that process or be a part of that process? I was just curious of how.
You're freezing up a bit. You're freezing up a bit on me, but I think you're referring to the
coordination.
Plan 2035 task force that they're likely. Yeah, right.
Yes.
So the question is how that's linked to this.
Exactly. Will this
Right.
inform that task force or be a part of it, or just what the relationship is or is not? Can you hear me
It's
okay?
a great question.
Yeah.
We can hear you now. We're staffing that task force. So Mr. Rowe, I don't know, you may have some thoughts about how we bring this into that.
Well, that's my thought, that this would definitely inform the work of that task force. I think it's something they're going to be looking to the planning department to provide that kind of information. And, certainly we're going to try very hard to keep it front and center, because there are going to be a lot of players on that task force that can get things done. So, the task force is all part of the effort to get Plan 2035 implemented. And so it's certainly a key piece of information we think will inform their work.
I'm really glad to hear that, Mr. Rowe. Thank you so much.
Other thoughts, questions, reactions?
Just a question, Mr. Chairman. Did you say that we're staffing that work body?
Effectively, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We're staffing it, but we also will have some form of representation on it that is under discussion about how that's going to land. But we will have representation as well as some staffing.
Okay. I was wondering if we would have both, or just staffing. So
The plan is both. Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions, thoughts, reactions around this?
I have a couple of thoughts / reactions on it. So one of the things I think we need, and this is going to be preaching to the choir for Mr. Rowe, but one of the things that we need to really be consistent on as we're going forward. It's great that we're getting the zoning aspects in with the zoning rewrite, but multimodal transportation, as we're trying to reduce the fatalities and dangerousness of some of these areas, is promoting in concert the infrastructure that we have to have in place for biking and pedestrian safety and all these other things that are needed. Because that's where we're sometimes falling short. Like we're getting approvals coming through, and we're getting piecewise improvements on some of the pedestrian safety, but there's not always like an overarching kind of ability to resolve some of the existing infrastructure on parcels that aren't coming before the planning board. And I think that's where we're going to need the help of the county council and other localities to figure out ways that we can connect sidewalks, make improvements along streets, and getting SHA in particular to the table to actually do their job. For a long time, they've sort of ignored some of the pedestrian safety aspects on their own right-of-ways, even at the intervention that I've come in and tried to work with some of their regional staff teams to fix sidewalks and make it more safe and stuff. They've just dragged their feet. Like it took a year and a half to get a 12-foot improvement in place on East-West Highway that was their fault for closing out permits and not doing. We need to have all the actors at the table and just kind of continuing our preaching of that. So I know that you're quite well aware of that, but it maybe doesn't hurt to mention, or for us to mention, the need to have everyone actually being active participants and not just passively filling seats on this kind of a commission, because otherwise we're not going to get anything done, because that's what's happened in the past. And if we want to improve things, we need to actually get them doing things and working with us. The other aspect that I think we need to really keep in mind is schools, because when we're trying to fund educational opportunities in this county, I don't think we're actually doing a good job at having school investment keep in line with development. Recently, we've had some priorities on a number of schools coming up in PPP kind of partnerships and stuff, but we're not doing a good job at the educational quality in our county. And I'm fortunate that my kid had gotten into one of the lottery programs in the school that's fantastic. But we're really lagging behind. That's what I hear time and time and time again when people catch me in the community or they see things and say, oh, what are you doing about the schools? And unfortunately, our county does not have a good reputation in the state for education. That's a good reason why people leave that are here when they have kids and they get to the age of needing to take advantage of the public schools, and they look at their taxes and they look over at Montgomery County or places nearby who are getting a lot better return on their investment for public taxes. So if you can maybe, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or if there are ways that you can kind of raise that issue, I think that would be really helpful. And then the last aspect is sort of how do we get, and maybe you don't want to answer this question entirely, but how do we get the county council on board and up to speed with like modern zoning and modern practices? Because there's a county bill right now that's capping development outside of transit-oriented districts, which is in theory not a bad idea, or permits, I guess I should say. It's not a bad idea to prioritize these denser areas of the county, but the way in which they're doing it is just going to kill affordability in our county. And I say that because I'm an expert in this stuff. Like, it's not me just sitting on the planning board complaining because I don't get along with the county council, which isn't the case. It's because I do this stuff at a federal level, and what they're doing right now, it's just like taking a hammer and going at like the glass table. Like, it's just going to shatter and cut everything. And we need them to work with you all because you're the local experts in this stuff. So are there ways that we can maybe work more hand in hand with them that you might have in mind to achieve these goals while not messing up stuff or sparking fear in the developers who already have gone quite a ways away into the process? That's where I'm kind of struggling, where I'm not seeing some of the implementation happening in practice. Like, the ideas are on paper, they're good. Some of the intentions are well-meaning, but the execution is just very poor. And I think that's where we can potentially help, but I don't know how we necessarily help. And I'm looking to see if you have any sort of suggestions on those fronts.
And let me jump in.
Of course, I have a lot of, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, were you saying something?
Yeah, I just want to jump in a bit because some of that is sort of far afield from what Mr. Rowe and what this specific project is here for, which is focusing on priority capital projects. But there's nothing you're saying, Commissioner Jordan, that I wouldn't associate myself with. But I don't want to put too much pressure on Mr. Rowe to comment on things that are not related to this specific task. So with that,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's basically what, I'm sorry. That's basically what I was going to say. We are, the specific issue of the resolution before the council is something that we're looking at separately and working with the council on that particular issue. But I'm sure it'll come up as part of the task force discussion and trying to figure out some of those answers. As far as school construction and the quality of schools, I think that's another topic that the task force is going to have to tackle. It's not so much a facilities issue. The county has invested a lot in facilities. A lot of our facility challenges in Prince George's County are an issue of districting and not necessarily physical plant. And so, and also the types of growth that we're anticipating in our regional transit districts and centers may not generate as many school children as some of the more developed some of the more suburban developments in the outer areas of the county. And so these are all things that the task force will undertake once that gets going. As far as this particular topic, the capital projects, you're absolutely preaching to the choir about the need to have SHA at the table and participating. I think they're hearing that from every possible angle, from our elected officials at the state and local level, from staff, in a way they haven't heard it before, that they need to invest in multimodalism and invest in complete streets in Prince George's County. And so those conversations are ongoing through the county's feedback on the Consolidated Transportation Program, through project level discussions with staff at the staff-to-staff level, and also with the and also through the ongoing master plan of transportation, which we're currently working on concurrently with this. So absolutely, what you said, Commissioner Durner, about the state's involvement is critical, and we're having those conversations, and always welcome the planning board's input on that, and adding your voice to the voice of others that are pushing SHA in the right direction.
All right, so thank you for those comments. I realize I just used my bully pulpit because it's related to Plan 35, and a lot of these things are going to overlap at some point. One of the other things to kind of keep in the back of your mind when you're talking with SHA or just any of the local kind of other jurisdictions, when we're working on CIP stuff, there's like the trolley trail expansion that we've had going on forever down Route 1 to Armand Trout Road. One of the recent challenges that I ran into with them is that they had shovels on the ground and were perfectly capable of putting in water fountains, and the city of Hyattsville wanted them to do that, and they wouldn't, because they said it was outside the project scope and it was too late. And that was like the prime time for them to just be a little bit more flexible and work on things that would help out our bike trails and access to these multimodal kind of like encouragements and stuff, and to just make it nicer and more applicable. So it might take us, I think, twisting their arms sometimes to think about things in a little bit different framework as you're putting these CFPs together, thinking about how we can tie together various aspects that aren't necessarily like straight, like this is the exact project and this is exactly how we do it. Like we may need to think about other things that relate to it that we can do at the same time, that are completely related and sort of like timing and infrastructure and putting it in, may not be exactly how it's written down on paper, but just having that flexibility is how we get really good projects in place. We can't just keep going down the route of, well, that wasn't done 5 years ago in this plan, so we can't do that now. Like there has to be some flexibility in this because things change dynamically really quickly, particularly since the pandemic. Like that was only a few years ago that we got into the pandemic, and lots of stuff has changed. We have to have some flexibility as we're bringing them to the table in the other local jurisdictions as well.
Okay.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, reactions? All right, we're good to go. Thank you for the update on this. Keep moving it along. It's an exciting project, and hopefully it'll help provide important data for the county executive and the county council and the agencies, and we look forward to staying updated on this.
Mr. Chair, I have just one comment, and I've mentioned it before, is I think what the county needs to look at in terms of affordability would be the ADUs, but also 2, 3, and 4 family houses, which would increase density, but at the same time, working people can buy it, and then they would have either 1, 2, or 3 other apartments to help them with the mortgage. And I think we're missing the boat on that. It's being done. Historically, it's always been done in the Northeast, and it's been successful. But over here, we're just doing the duplexes, the townhouses, and apartments, as opposed to some middle housing where working people can afford to buy a house because they'll have somebody else helping to pay with the mortgage.
Mhm.
That's all.
Thank you for that. Okay, nothing for on this. minutes, then thank you. Okay, nothing else first on this. Thank you, Mr. Rowe, for the presentation. Move on with our agenda. Okay, we're on to our regular agenda items. First item is item 11, Comprehensive Design Plan CDP 22001 Saddle Ridge. We have Mr.